Welcome to our episode of Biblical Archaeology, From the Ground Down. Presented by Bible Interact and hosted by Dr. George Sparks. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of the Bible from leading experts in the field of archaeology.
Well, good morning, people. My name is Dr. George Sparks. This is Biblical Archaeology From the Ground Down. Today I have with me Dr. David Graves. Received his PhD from Aberdeen University in Scotland. Also, he has over 30 years experience in the Near East at such places as the Temple Mount, I think it's the Temple Mount Sifting Society. Is that it? The Sifting Project? And you've been influential at Shiloh. I think you were at Tel El MacArthur. And then you were my supervisor at Tel El Hammam in Jordan. So you've been around quite a bit, and it's always a privilege to have you here on our program. We're going to be talking and continuing the discussion on his book, Jesus Speaks to the Seven Churches. This is my imitation of Vanna White, except I don't get paid the same. And then what can I say? So Jesus Speaks to the Seven Churches, and we are at the Church of Philadelphia, not in California.
Welcome to ancient Philadelphia, one of the seven churches mentioned in Revelation chapter 3 verses 7 to 17. It was a city that stood as a gateway to opportunity and prosperity. To truly understand the message that Philadelphia received, it is important to delve into both its cultural history, influenced by the Greco-Roman civilization, and its theological roots, rooted in Hebraic-Semitic traditions. In this video, we will explore the historical background of this remarkable city and examine some of the local references in the message to Philadelphia. Let's begin with the geography of Philadelphia. Today it is known as Elashahir, meaning the Red City. Originally, it derived its name from the Greek word Philadelphia, which translates to brotherly love. The city is located approximately 30 miles southeast of Sardis, at the eastern end of a fertile valley in the Roman province of Lydia. It sits at an elevation of 305 feet above sea level and is about 37 miles away from the Aegean Sea. Philadelphia was established in the 2nd century BC with the purpose of spreading Hellenism. The Hellenistic site of Philadelphia likely assimilated the ancient Chaltibus population, which according to Herodotus belonged to the Lydian civilization. The city was either founded by Eumenes II or his younger brother, Attalus Philadelphus of Pergamum. The name Philadelphia itself carries the meaning of brotherly love, which is derived from the strong bond between Attalus II, known as Philadelphus, and his brother Eumenes. In the 2nd century AD, the city of Philadelphia was home to a population of over 10,000 people. However, this number was small compared to other ancient cities, as frequent earthquakes and tremors often drove people to seek safer living arrangements outside the city. Many chose to live on nearby agricultural farms, away from the constant threat of natural disasters. This was meaningful when John said to the church, "The one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it." The citizens of Philadelphia were a diverse mix of Lydian and Mysian backgrounds, creating a unique and vibrant community. Sadly, the ancient remains of this city have been lost to time, as the modern city of Philadelphia has been built on top of it. As a result, very few ancient artifacts have been discovered, leaving much of the city's history shrouded in mystery. Two of the few remains still visible are the overgrown theater and the outline of the stadium, both of which have never been excavated. However, the message in Revelation describes the earliest mention of Christian churches, shedding light on the existence of a thriving Christian community in this ancient city. All our books are listed on our website smyrnaean.blogspot.com and can be purchased on Amazon. More details and sources can be found in our commentary, Jesus Speaks to Seven of His Churches.
So, Dr. Graves, welcome to the program. Let's begin. I'm eager to hear about Philadelphia.
Well, good to be with you again, George. Seven churches are close to my heart because I did my PhD work on it. So I'm looking forward to doing another one of the churches. Philadelphia is probably one of the least known because there's very few remains there. In fact, some of the tour groups don't even take you there because there's so little material or information. Revelation 3:8 says, "I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut." Now we need to look at the significance of what some of the local references in the message of Revelation mean. The city itself is about 30 miles from the next city that we looked at, close to Sardis. So it's just south of Sardis. The city has, on the eastern end of the fertile valley, one of the newest of the seven churches. It was founded in about 189 to 138 BC, probably by Attalus II of Pergamum in 159 to 138, somewhere in there. The name, of course, Philadelphia. We know Philadelphia, United States, the big city of Philadelphia, named means the city of brotherly love.
Yeah.
And it comes from the love between Attalus II and his brother, according to Polybius. So that's the origin of the name of the city there. It had a few name changes. An earthquake hit it in the first century. There was an earthquake in 17 BC and another one, I think, in 23 BC. It had a population of about 10,000 people, a mix of Lydian and Mysian and Roman people, Macedonian business people from that local area. And the site is covered by the modern city of Philadelphia, or Al-Shazir in Turkey today. So has never been excavated. There's very few ancient artifacts, a few of them in the museum, but nothing really visible. The only thing we really see when the tourists go there is the Byzantine church remains from St. John the theologian. So we go to the coinage. The coinage helps us understand what's going on in the period, because they would put pictures on their coins that would highlight important features of the city. So we have the gods of Artemis on coins and Aphrodite. We have the coins of pictures of Zeus, Deimos, Athena. Now, Deimos was one of the emperors, Trajan and Tyche. We have the emperor on one side of the coin and the god or goddess on the other side of the coin. We have pictures of Apollo, and we also have the pictures of Helios. So these are all gods that were celebrated in the city. As we mentioned in our previous lectures and podcasts, the whole area of Lydia highlighted the stater, and the stater was the gold coin that made the area very wealthy, because they were mining gold in the area, making coinage. Now, the message in Revelation has a very early reference. Ignatius of Antioch wrote a letter to Philadelphia, as well as we have the message in Revelation. In 155 AD, 11 Philadelphian Christians were martyred, along with Polycarp, who was the bishop of Smyrna. That's the modern day Izmir in Turkey. So we have martyrs from the area. So there was a large Christian population in the city. The city was prosperous from the agriculture. We have coins now with pictures of grapes on them. The cult of Dionysius was popular in the city. And so it had a strategic location as the gateway to the east. And so this may be the reference in Revelation to being the door. It was the gateway. Now, one of the downsides of this particular region is the seismic activity that took place, according to Strabo. Volcanic activity and earthquakes produced numerous cracks in the city walls, a lot of destruction. And as I had mentioned, there were two earthquakes, one in 17 AD. 12 of the cities in the region were destroyed, totally devastated, including Philadelphia. Tacitus, the ancient writer, and Pliny mentioned this, so we know that took place. But what's interesting is that the emperor Tiberius ended up helping to rebuild the city in gratitude for rebuilding it. The city produced coins that added the name Nero Caesarea to the name of Philadelphia. And they also added to them the name of Flavia. That was the wife of Vespasian in 69 to 79 is when he reigned. They attached that name to their coins. They wanted to thank the Romans for rebuilding their city and gave them another name. Now, this is very interesting because the book of Revelation says, I will write upon him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, which is the New Jerusalem. So think about that for a moment. Here's a city that had two new names, and John in Revelation says, I'm going to give you another special name, the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem. They understood what the changing of the name meant.
Wow, I never heard that before. This is the first time I've ever heard that explained, and it does make a lot of sense. Go ahead on. That's fascinating.
So John's writing to these churches using the local references, the cultural context, things that only the people in those cities would understand and would resonate with them. That's powerful. God speaks understandably to man. So having lived in a city that had already undergone two name changes, they have the name of Neo Caesarea, and it's on their coins. So this is not like something they weren't aware of. Every time they went to pay for their bread, buy a bottle of wine, they lay down their coins, they see the name Nero Caesarea and Flavia added to it. And so they have been notified that there's going to be a third permanent name change given to the Christians who live there in Philadelphia. Also, we have in Revelation, I will set before you an open door and no one can shut it. Perhaps understood against Philadelphia's cultural position as the door to the east. The Christians have an open door for evangelism. Also, the contrast to God's open door to Christians in heaven that no man can shut. You know, eternal security. Very interesting how God gives the messages in Revelation. And then he also says, he shall go out no more in verse 12. He will go out no more. Remember that this city has experienced two drastic, devastating earthquakes, 17 AD, 23 AD, first century. So as the Philadelphians would no longer need to run from the city in fear of their lives, they would never need to leave the temple in Jerusalem, Revelation 21, or the temple in heaven. So eternal security is certainly a comfort to these early believers that would be living under this seismic destruction and activity in their own city. And the other thing to remember is that when the priest of the imperial cult retired, their name was etched into the temple pillars. Verse 12 says, him that overcomes, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God.
Never heard that one explained like that. This is fascinating. It really is. It really is.
So in the practice, we also see where their names are etched in the pillar, not only of the imperial cult, but also at Capernaum, we have the name of the financial contributors where their names are written on the pillar. So when John and the Holy Spirit speaks to these Christians, they all understood what it meant to have a pillar with their names written on it in the temple of my God. And there we have the significance, I think. Isaiah says, the Gentiles shall see your righteousness and all kings your glory. You should be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord will name. So the message that was written to these Philadelphian Christians was very pertinent and understandable if we know the archaeology. Right. The only two things we have now are the stadium that you can see. It's never been excavated. On the theater, there's not much to look at, but you can still see some of the remains. It would be wonderful to excavate it, but it has never been done. That ends our trip around Philadelphia and the significance of the message that John gave to that church and how relevant it was for them in their cultural context.
Okay, well, so we got time to really look at this as it, as I feel it was implied when I was in the congregation in the pew, and a preacher was, his sermon was on one of the churches of Revelation, and it's reflecting on us today, but also us in relation to either the Lord's coming or in heaven. And really, I don't know if would that be correct or not.
Well, the theme, I think, for a preacher might be focusing on eternal security.
Yeah, it'd been nice to, like, once again, to get something that actually explains what John was writing to the church, and then what it meant to them, because that's who they were writing to, not to
Yes.
us. We are, I'll just speak for myself. I was a pastor, and I think I'll probably be guilty of this too. Looking at the book of Revelation as if it's written to us today, and it's not.
I often say to our students, it's not all about us.
Right.
What did it mean to those Christians who are reading it in the first century, and how do we understand it in that context? Then we can apply it to how we are living today. But the clues that we find from archaeology, the geography, and the culture are so important for us understanding what the Bible really means to us.
Right. I mean, this whole series of the seven churches so far has been so fascinating. The understanding of the mystical 666. In the excavation, they found evidence of how they actually used, you could say, words as numerical symbols to add it up like a hidden clue. It's kind of like walking into one of those movies like National Treasures, where there's a little code and you slowly figure it out. Then you make your next move, and there might be another little code. Then you make your next move until it's finally completed at the end. And I think for us, the treasure is the knowledge
Yep.
at the end of what it really meant to them at that time. And for us today, first of all, understand that and how we should see it in a reflection in our culture. In each of these individual cases where John is writing to each church individually and unique according to their city and what was important to them and how it was structured. But we miss all that. I'll just say for myself, I missed all that in the sermons that I heard because it
Yeah.
was so general and like it was written to us today. And this is how we should take it.
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
another lesson we should learn from this is that God treats us as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
He treated the churches as individual churches in their own location, in their own situation, in their own difficulties, in their own problems. And that's how God treats us. He knows our situation. He knows our circumstances. That's how he treats us.
Every podcast on each individual city, you tell us what the slide is behind you. What's the slide behind you right now?
Oh, good question. This is really the only remains that when you go on a tour of the seven churches, if you ever go there to Turkey, this is the Byzantine church remains of St. John, the theologian. Of course, John is the one who wrote the book of Revelation, and this is what we have commemorated in many of the churches at the time. So there's no doubt this is Philadelphia. And this is the remains that we have today of the Church of St. John in Philadelphia. I'll give a couple of the other slides of the archaeological remains, but like one's in a garden of a house, and the other is in the field, and it's pretty large, but it has never been excavated.
Okay, what did these ruins of the church date to?
they would date to the Byzantine period, probably I don't know the exact date on the church, probably 6th or 7th century. So they're a bit later. Those remains.
And then by just looking at the pictures, I see the guardrail. How large are those stones in there?
Oh, those are very large. They'd be over probably 1.5 meters high and wide. So they're pretty large. These are part of the arches that would have been part of the cathedral of that Byzantine church. Because I was specializing and focusing on the Roman remains, I never did a lot of research on that Byzantine church because it's later. But they were commemorating the location of Philadelphia as one of the 7 churches, because we know that's where it is. And they would have been celebrating the book of Revelation there at Al-Shazar is what it's called today in Turkish. But the city of brotherly love was being celebrated by the Byzantines, Christians in the church.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just trying to compare it. I see the trees, and so as a Byzantine church, this would have been quite large.
Oh yes, it was a very large church, so very significant. But again, it has since deteriorated. The photograph that I'll show you, if I move my head you can see there's a mosque minaret behind me.
Yeah.
So
you're hiding that.
Yeah, I was. Well, I don't. That could be providential. I don't know, but yeah, it's been taken over by the Muslims, the whole region, and of course, the city was built on top of the Roman ruins, so it's difficult to do a lot of excavations when you have to dig through somebody's house or somebody's property. This is probably one of the least excavated cities. Our next city we're going to look at is going to be Laodicea. There's been a lot of major excavations having been done in the last 10 or 15 years, and I'll show some pretty spectacular photographs because they want to turn Laodicea into a tourist attraction similar to Ephesus.
Okay.
And we know how much there is at Ephesus. So they've done a lot of reconstruction work there. I'll show some nice photographs, current photographs from that location. But Philadelphia, one of the few. In fact, when we were doing a tour of Israel or of Turkey and the 7 churches, they didn't take us here to that location on one of the original excavations or bus tour trips we took around the 7 churches, because there's so little to see there other than just this photograph behind my head. The photographs I have are from a colleague of mine who did his PhD on the Book of Revelation, as like 7 churches, like I did years ago. Dr. Mark Wilson, and who lives part-time in Turkey and is able to go to the location there at Philadelphia and look around and find some of the Roman remains. So the photos I'll show you are very rare and very significant for what Philadelphia is all about, not from your local tourist tour.
Right. No, I really appreciate the what you've shared with us. Now, of course, in the past, the churches that we've already talked about, all in your book, Jesus Speaks to the 7 Churches, which I do recommend, because we gain so much knowledge, like in this podcast. The names on the columns, we didn't talk about that briefly. If we could, you said the names of, it was members of the city had their names written on the columns. Those that were, I guess, wealthy had their names on the columns,
and also the priests of the imperial cult.
Priest, okay.
The priest names when they became a priest in the imperial cult. The imperial cult was the cult of worshiping the emperor of Rome. And we have all these imperial temples dedicated to, Tiberius or Domitian or whoever, Hadrian. And they would have an election, and they would elect a high priest who would supervise the practices in the imperial cult. When they retired or when they were elected, their names were placed on the pillars in that particular temple. So all the Christians would understand what having your name etched into a pillar meant, that we have mentioned in the book of Revelation.
Okay. I just kind of smiling because I remember there was a time when I was in my 20s where I went into a full gospel. I was raised Lutheran, and then I went into a little full gospel episode where we had, um, I was working my way through college, so I was in a factory, and members asked me or invited me to their church, and it was Pentecostal. Now I went from Lutheran, which I call Catholic light, to Pentecostal. I tell you what, my first service there, I was scared. I never know about the laying on of hands, the healings, the slaying in the spirit, all terminologies that you pick up. If you know, um, yeah, that was a new experience for me. I think I still went for a number of years. I found it fascinating, and of course, I remember a preacher talking about getting to heaven, walking on streets of gold, wearing a crown of gold, a mansion over a hilltop. I kind of remembered that the movies or the sitcom series back in the '60s called The Big Valley, and they had they ride the horses. The mansion was. I thought, oh, someday that'll be me. Um, and then of course to get getting your name written on one of the columns. And I remember, and you just mentioned what that's all about. And I think, what, it's just so much fun to listen to you and have this explained in an academic fashion. It's still the way I used to, when I was a kid, I used to believe it's not necessary to walk on the street of gold and a crown on my
Well,
head. I'm even bald. I don't want a crown.
there's nothing like walking the streets of Ephesus and walking the Roman roads and seeing the pillars with the names actually etched into them.
Right.
It just brings the Bible alive to us. And for me, that has been a wonderful experience, and brings the Bible alive in a way
Right, it
that
does. I really
you
appreciate
never.
it.
So I hope that
And
our listeners will get to be encouraged and inspired by these podcasts, and that they can take away a few lessons of life that will be helpful for them, all from the archaeology and the cultural background we have mentioned to us in the New Testament.
right. So today I'm talking with Dr. David Graves about his book, Jesus Speaks to the Seven Churches. And we were at the city of Philadelphia. Dr. Graves, I thank you for your time. I learned so much by listening to you. It's a wonderful experience. And once again, we'll be back again. And the next city we're going to talk about will be
Laodicea. And we're going to be talking about hot water and cold water and lukewarm water. And I have a new twist on that that's going to be connected with wine that you're not going to want to miss.
Oh, so we should bring our amphoras.
You should bring your amphora.
I'm going to put water in it, and I'm expecting a change.
Why do the Romans not like lukewarm?
Right. Now, besides the 666, that one, I'm waiting for this one. This is going to be a lot of fun because I've also heard what the lukewarm water was in other lectures. I
Yep.
know that we talked about it earlier. You do have your own little twist on this. I'm not going to give it away. So
No.
you got to join us on this next one. You're going to if you're a pastor of a church, especially you, because you're going to gain a lot of knowledge with us in this, and from Dr. Graves, and to be able to administer this into your sermons. And I
Good.
know you're going to enjoy it. Thanks so much for your time, Dr. Graves. I'm going to see you again on in our next episode, our next podcast, where we're going to talk about the next city where Jesus speaks to the 7 churches. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.